Good late afternoon, St. Francis and people of God. It is Thursday, the 19th day of January 2023, Thursday of the second week of the year, the second week in Ordinary Time. Yes, I am already all over the place, even though trying to get back on track in January from being all over the place during Advent and Christmas this year, but it just still is all over the place. So a late afternoon reflection, at least getting one in today. On the road, going to DC for the Mass for Life, to see what actually is going to happen there, because in one way a battle has been won, and so we're going to see what happens now with this tradition that has arisen, and what will become of it. So Bishop and I coming to the shrine tomorrow to have our North Carolina Mass for people who are attending the events that will happen tomorrow. But in any event, it is Thursday of the second week in Ordinary Time. Hebrews continues. Hebrews actually asking the question, what makes good worship? What makes good liturgy? Which is an important question always to ask. And the caution that the writer to the Hebrews, says is that we must be aware of human contrived things that go into worship, that worship should always, our liturgy always should echo and should reflect the heavenly liturgy, the liturgy that occurs before the throne of God. And the example that is used about Moses constructing the tabernacle for God in the desert, and making sure that what is erected is not in mimicry of anything that could be humanly contrived or human made, but is reflective of what God experiences, of what the angels experience in heaven. An important thing. And again, and this is where Jesus is then listed mentioned, affirmed as the high priest, who does not need to offer sacrifice day in and day out again and again, because he did that once, with his life, and created a new relationship with God for all of humanity. Echoing that and reflecting that is really what our worship and our liturgy should be like all the time. Although sometimes we've gotten into the habit of thinking that we crucify Jesus every time on the altar, only to raise him up again, in Eucharist. And that is not what we are about in liturgy ever. It is not basically to repeat something that was done once and for all, but sometimes that gets into people's heads, it gets in the priests' heads, and that does not reflect the liturgy that God desires. It does not reflect the liturgy that, again, Hebrews says we must be about as believers. So it's always important to discern, whenever we are celebrating liturgy, whenever we are worshiping, what are the human elements that could in many ways distract and get in the way of us being conscious of the fact that it is with God and for God, and through God, that we are able to do what we do. And because it involves God, that transformation of ourselves as human beings into what we are meant and called to be as created by God can occur. In the gospel today, in Mark's gospel today, we are still continuing with Jesus' experiences in Galilee, in Galilee, in Nazareth, Capernaum, where have you. And people just want to see, people want something from Jesus. Everybody wants something from Jesus today. And so the sick, the ill, or whatever it is, going to find him so they can be cured and things can be better in their lives. And there are a bunch of demons who kind of, shriek as they leave people as he does an expelling of them. And he tells them, and they scream out that he's the Son of God. And Jesus says, be quiet, don't tell anybody I'm that. It's always, again, a very big question of this thing called the Messianic secret, which in the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and more pronounced in Mark itself, it seems to be a kind of a running pattern with Jesus. While he's doing things so that people become aware of something new happening in their midst, especially with demonic forces, what have you, when they acknowledge him for what he is, he often tells them to be quiet. And again, it is because it is not the special effect that brings people to faith. It is not miracles that bring people to faith, although we think that that's kind of the best avenue, or the most easiest avenue to show people that there is a God to believe in and there is a faith to have. It is not through the special effect. It is through the transformation of mind and heart. It is through what we dare to consider ourselves to be, and consider ourselves to be before God, and consider ourselves to be because God does not abandon or give up on us, but loves us tremendously and always. That is what causes faith to blossom. That is what causes faith to flourish. That is what brings people to faith, in understanding our own, when they begin to understand and see our own experiences of God's life within us, and what can happen, and how our perspectives and how our attitudes change because of God's life within us. and may the Lord give you his peace.